Time to jump over to our performance marketing panel. We're going to talk performance growth marketing. We've got a great lineup for this, including Liz Ferguson, at Director of Paid Media at Bright House Financial, Tamara Scott, AVP of Social Media at Chubb. Chubb is a world leader in luxury insurance. We've got Lou Calabrese, CMO at Robertson Stevens. Robertson Stevens is a wealth management company. And we've got Puyan Alizadeh, lead creative director at Designity. Designity also is one of our sponsors for this event, and I'm excited to work with them. They are full kind of fractional design team solution with folks like Puyan that can be the experienced senior creative directors leading a creative team for you. So it's a great resource. All right, so I want to click off with you, Liz, and you know, at Bright House Financial, I think you're doing some interesting influencer and kind of we keep coming back to employee generated content, creator content across these 2 days, and just video strategy across the board. How essential is it for Bright House to cultivate kind of internal and advocacy voices in their video content? How do you select those voices? We talked with Katie about this earlier, but how do you select the voices? What impact has that had on the business and on kind of the performance growth side of your paid media work?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jason, and good afternoon, everyone. I love this question. When you can position your employees as subject matter experts and thought leaders externally, it can add a lot of value and credibility back to your business. And we've consistently seen that human-centric content performs more strongly within our social media channels, whether that is our internal voices or external advocates. We create content featuring employees that includes videos and LinkedIn Lives. And most recently, we've actually filled campaigns around financial thought leadership that we can scale across all of our channels to engage our target audience, which is financial professionals. A recent example has been a new content series that we've launched around the topic of being prepared for multiple market conditions in retirement and the role that RILAs or buffered annuities can play. And in terms of how we selected the thought leaders for that campaign, we have a group within Bright House Financial that provide market insights, education, and industry perspectives. So it really just was that perfect group for us to tap into to create content and provide that scale externally.
And your team has been producing some of these series for a while. You do them at events. What do you have any learnings? When we spoke before, you told me that you've kind of learned over the years just the little details of maybe it's media training, maybe it's how to do these video shoots better and get more content out of them. What are some key lessons from that for you?
Yeah, we'll do, a 1 to 2 day shoot where we are bringing in all of our the employees that we've selected and shooting it throughout the course of that 1 to 2 days. We're also bringing in our compliance partners. We are all in a highly regulated industry, so we're bringing them onto the set so they can give us real-time feedback. So we're making sure that the content we're capturing, we can be able to leverage that externally, and we're applying their feedback in the moment. So that's made it, really successful for us to be more turnkey on our sets and when we're filming.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson. The more reps you do, the more of those details you catch, and really getting the most teams involved on set sometimes is really beneficial.
Yeah.
Tamara, I'd love to bring you into kind of the maybe creator influencer side of this conversation. Working with influencers. When I talked to you before the conference, we talked about how you've had some success really tapping into more emotional topics as kind of a side benefit of working with influencer creator content because it might be more friendly to compliance or regulations. And you gave an example of a college savings plan program where you created content around like giving a creator $100 to spend in a day and content just around that and not around the product necessarily. Can you talk about lessons from that type of program and more broadly how you like to work with influencers?
Sure. So I'd love to also support bringing in compliance early and legal and having them on set or part of the activation because that always makes it so much easier. But yeah, from an influencer perspective, so I used to work for Vanguard Financial Company and have done a couple companies in between before landing back in a regulated industry like insurance. But A lot of people tend to think, it can be difficult to work with influencers, especially in a regulated industry. But there's actually a lot you can do in that space, especially as you mentioned, Jason, if you tap into the more emotional side of things and really think about or partner with the influencers on some of the things that they're passionate about, not just, food or fashion or that sort of thing, but really diving a little deeper. So one of the campaigns I worked on at Vanguard was for our college savings program and working with influencers, as Jason mentioned, giving them a certain per diem for the day and having them really do what matters most to them, something that's meaningful to them and their families, knowing that their savings are secure with the company, and they can focus on the fun while we focus on getting their kids to college. And similarly did something with Chubb where we partnered with someone in the high-end jewelry space, and they were really excited around the holidays to think about what are some of the new jewelry pieces I've acquired this year, either that are new or through family members, things that were really meaningful to them, and then partnering with how do we make sure we're protecting that for the long term. So some of the lessons that have come from that is that, sometimes you see influencers seamlessly integrating a message into their posts, and sometimes it's a little more explicit around the products and services that might be offered. And sometimes in a regulated industry, being too explicit can actually be a detriment and can turn off the audience or get you into trouble. So leaning more on those emotional aspects and the personal passions has really been a way to tell your brand story and the products and services without kind of dipping your toe too deep into an area that you don't want to be part of.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting kind of corollary there. It makes me think of the example we talked about yesterday of NerdWallet's Super Bowl commercial and how they just allowed influencers to really lean into their format and the way they tell stories and gave them a lot of freedom. And I think your insight of like leaning into their emotional or kind of deep passion points makes the content easier for them and probably more compelling, along with some of these other benefits you're mentioning. Have you found do you have any tips for either the discovery of the right influencers and like kind of filtering to find those people, and or how how long you kind of come back to the same people? Like if you do have a really good campaign with a specific creator or influencer, uh, do you find going back to them for multiple campaigns is useful, or do you have to mix it up more?
For the most part, the campaigns I've worked on have mixed up the influencers quite a bit. But when I was at Vanguard, we did play around with having influencers as part of a 6 month rotation plan. I think that works if you have more of an established influencer process or program at your company, and you know who some of the key influencers are in your space. We had talked about doing that in the fall for at Chubb, but we're pretty new to the influencer space in North America, so we didn't want to commit ourselves to one or two or however many individuals for a certain period of time. But after seeing the opportunity and the success of our recent campaign, there's a definite chance we would go back to the influencer, because knowing that there's someone that you can trust and you like their messaging and their audience is the right audience for you to connect with is huge. Because finding individuals can be difficult. I've worked in places where I've had access to platforms where you can, and agencies where you can more easily identify influencers and their audiences when you're doing it a little more grassroots. It can be tough to really understand who the audience is of the influencer that you're trying to connect with. And you can't always assume, okay, I'm in fashion, they're in fashion. I'm in insurance, they're talking about insurance or finance, and that's who their audience is. You really need to be able to dive deeper. And some of the influencers are able to provide more metrics. I would say don't be afraid to ask. I've literally just searched hashtags and found individuals and scoured their profiles sometimes when I've had to do it more grassroots, and then reaching out and asking those strategic questions of who is your audience? Can you tell me who's engaging with you? Not just who's following you, but who's engaging with you. What are the topics that perform well? Really just diving a little bit deeper. And sometimes it does take work, and you kind of have to, I don't want to say stalk in a bad way, but kind of stalk people across all the platforms and go back deep, make sure they're appropriate for your brand, Googling them, where are they doing
Yeah.
interviews, what's coming up. And sometimes it, works out, and sometimes you don't want to meet with that person after you've done all that research. But for me, I would say, I would really think closely about who you're partnering with again and again, and not necessarily stating that up front, because that can kind of get you in trouble sometimes too.
It makes sense. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Puyan, I'd love to bring you into this. You are a lead creative director. Obviously, we're talking a lot so far just about video. I know that's kind of high production. We can't create video for everything on the performance side, especially. Um, when it comes to maybe taking a step back more broadly and thinking about creative animations, illustrations, kind of stock imagery, more static graphics, in 2025, how do you determine the best creative approach for the kind of finance clients that you work with across different platforms?
Thank you, Jason. And that's a beautiful question. I love it. So when we talk about acquiring people, we need to understand people. And we are living in this world of AI overload or hyper-saturated contents. And sometimes some of the contents that we have, especially for the short span of attention of people nowadays, it's really hard to grab attention, but also evoke emotion. So what really matters is that how genuine you are with whatever format that you are working with and whatever medium that you are at, and you need to embrace imperfection. That's what I envision for 2025 to be one of the trends over here. And when we talk about imperfection, you touch point on stock imageries, illustrations, animations. So for stock imagery, what I'm actually leaning more towards, and I see more in the industry now, is that we are again moving towards more relatable stuff. So flash on kind of photography, or like snapshots of people's lives is performing really well. It's performing really well. Hyper polished works are kind of like on the edge right now. We are more leaning towards more rough stuff. And when it comes to flat design, we are actually kind of moving away from it, and we are moving towards more the use of abstract imagery. And when it comes to illustrations, of course, again, polished is kind of boring. So we are seeing this return back to the cut and glue and have finished kind of work. And I can see that I mean, artists are kind of worried about AI. So that's why I think we are seeing this imperfection coming back. And you asked me this question about the imagery, but I wanted to talk about type as well, because as a graphic designer, they say once a graphic designer, always a graphic designer. They say that about everything, of course. But I can see that a lot of the assets that we are creating for type is moving towards custom lettering, handwritten stuff. But also, if I want to talk about fonts, we are moving towards more of a serif kind of approach versus the sans serif that basically dominated the industry, especially in the finance marketing for over a decade. So we are more moving towards that, as well as the ultra versatile typefaces. So we need to understand audiences. We cannot make assumptions over here, and one size doesn't fit all. So we need to have that in mind when we are creating something. And of course, finance is a little bit different. So there is a little bit of a delicate dance over there, especially because finance people are kind of the bottom liners, and they can see right through what you're trying to convey.
I really like the term delicate dance because that really does capture, telling a finance brand that they need to create something more unpolished or more human does have that brand versus performance team argument. But yeah, so I like the AI trend is kind of making you think more about what is unpolished, where can we show a little more rough edges, even in the copy, what copy looks like it wasn't written by AI because it's more unique, it's a little more human, it's using words AI doesn't use. Does that kind of summarize what you're thinking about?
Yeah, copy is actually a little bit different. So far I've said like so many bad things about AI, but I gotta be honest over here, AI has been helpful for my projects as well. So we are at this word that AI is helpful because we are in a fast-paced industry and we need to produce a lot of stuff. And we have these beautiful tools that are coming up, like Firefly bulk design, that lets you like design one asset and it's going to create like thousands of different things for you. And we did have a campaign that we were really having a hard time, I would say, in terms of conceptualizing when it comes to visuals, and that was really helpful too. But when going back to your question, when it comes to why AI and human touch, they cannot really work hand in hand, I would say AI does have a little bit of destructive sense over there. So if you even scroll through your LinkedIn, you're going to see that everything sounds the same. Every person is using the same chat GPT prompts, or like the same fire emojis over there. And as Tamara also mentioned as well, we are living this world of finance, marketing, and of course compliance, and disclaimers are really important. I always joke with my clients that we can just have this big disclaimer as an ad, and that would perform the best. But yeah, we shouldn't be like we should be staying away from talking about the same things over and over with the same tone of voice, and staying off brand in terms of, like the verbal language that we are using. And honestly, people can see it from kilometers away, if not miles away. So that's the case.
Oh, I can definitely appreciate that. Lou, I'd love to get your take on, you're working in wealth management. It's ultra high net worth individuals, kind of a difficult niche audience to reach. My understanding of your business is you're using a lot more kind of grassroots handshaking events to reach that audience. How does your team think about the data and the connections to generate those leads and to get people to events? Is AI kind of changing that space for you, or is it still more tangible marketing efforts?
I think it's an interesting question. I think it's probably a combo. I do want to note though, Puyan said something that was interesting. So it feels like I've been doing this delicate dance for 30 years with compliance and disclosures, and I'm sure my panelists would probably agree to that. So you sort of got to be careful of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I think it's really interesting. Whenever you deal with high-end brands, you have this issue. So in the wealth management space, everybody on this panel will agree, in the audience, that if you ask any financial advisor where they get most of their clients, 80% are going to, or almost all of them are going to say, I get most of my clients based on a referral, right? Hands down. It goes even higher when you're targeting high net worth and ultra high net worth people, right? Because they tend to be very private. So what we had to do is find out, how do we get more leads at the top of the funnel, but then leverage the relationship that these wealth managers have with those existing clients and centers of influence. Centers of influence being defined as basic CPAs, attorneys, et cetera, right? And there were a few ways we tackled this problem. So first, the wealth managers who had clients that they're still working in the workforce, we used LinkedIn Sales Navigator a lot to make those connections. So you find a client who's working, you see who they're working with at their company, who they may know from previous employment opportunities, and we try to make that connection. So we use the messaging system, we use email. It's even part of a phone call that they can have with the client. All these different ways that we can do it. So that's been actually really effective. Keep in mind though that we have a bunch of clients, and most wealth management firms are probably dealing with the same issue we're dealing with, which is all the clients are getting older, and a lot of them are in retirement. So we also use email marketing tactics to contact clients, ask for introductions to people outside of their household, see if there's any family members outside of the immediate family that may need help. Once again, trying to get to that lowest hanging fruit to get that referral, to have that conversation. And also it's within the household, it deepens that relationship with more assets that you're managing for them, which obviously helps with retention. And the third thing is relates to AI. So where we cross over a little bit, there's some really cool tools that are out there that are using AI, and they're pulling all of this data into one place. And in one case, we're uploading all of our clients into this tool. It uses 150 different attributes to tell you information about that client. Now, if you ask any wealth manager, you go, here's all the information about your client, they're going to say, I know everything about my client. even if they may not. Okay, but that's just the nature of how the business is run. But what is interesting is it actually connects you and tells you how other people that are connected to your client. So it tells you the level of connection, so like high, medium, or low, and how they may be connected. So I'll give you a couple examples. It may be people that they worked at the same company, or maybe part of a nonprofit board, maybe their neighbor, or they went to the same school. But in our case, the most interesting part, it actually helps you pre-qualify these folks so they can tell you their approximate net worth, their income. You can also tell how much their house is worth, and a lot of things that attribute to their net worth. So you sort of getting into this spot that you now know who these people are. They're somewhat warmer leads, and AI is done that for us. Like the old-fashioned way of doing things, and LinkedIn Sales Navigator is like that in some ways. The issues that I run into with Navigator is that if the person's not on LinkedIn all the time, you can message them all you want, they're not going to respond. And it's also people that are working. When you have a ton of people that the average age of our clients could be in the 60s. Well, they could be retired at that point, and I know they're not on LinkedIn anymore. So, or they're not checking. So these are the type of things that we're trying to get into, more of the personal information, trying to find more attributes of people that are connected to the clients and get more people to the top of the funnel that are more warmer versus worrying about um, finding people cold, which then you run into the problem of qualifying them. And if you get those people in through, say, ads or search, you don't know if they're the people that you want as clients.
You're muted, Jason. I'm sorry, you need to turn that off.
Thank you so much. All right. I love that. I love that detail, Lou, of how AI is impacting even the most kind of tactical, tangible marketing, in-person handshake marketing. So that's really insightful. Liz, we've mentioned LinkedIn a couple times. I would love to learn. I know we have have like a lot of attendees from Bright House Financial on the summit this week. So thanks all of them for joining. But how is Bright House using LinkedIn? I know you're using LinkedIn Live, lead generation ads, kind of editorial content. Can you talk to me about how you think about LinkedIn as a channel? Lou mentioned that there are some audiences you just can't reach on LinkedIn, but how has it changed? How has LinkedIn changed for Bright House over maybe the last year or two? What have been the big um, shifts for that platform for you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is one of the channels that we're, strategically leveraging to reach our target audience. As a B2B brand, we're just really intentional on focused on reaching financial professionals, and that has become that backbone of our strategy, and it informs, the media placements, our advertising efforts, and then also our MarTech stack. So, we are doing that research to see which channels financial professionals are consuming content, and we want to be there. And so LinkedIn is part of that multi-channel approach. So that kind of gets at your question, Jason, on how we're reaching people who are on LinkedIn. I would say we're really differentiated in the channels that we are advertising on. On LinkedIn, we do have a steady cadence of paid and organic editorial, so kind of that mix. And we also are leveraging lead generation on LinkedIn. So that allows us just to be really consistent in reaching financial professionals. And then, looking at LinkedIn specifically and how it's evolved over time, the biggest shifts that I've seen in the course of my career is that, LinkedIn is just really leaning into more interactive ad formats. That's what they're investing in. That's what they're prioritizing their algorithm to show. And we're also seeing that LinkedIn has really honed its audience targeting capabilities, which is certainly to brands' benefits. With LinkedIn, and really, as everyone on this panel knows, any social media channels, you just can't get stagnant in your strategy. What we found is you just have to monitor your KPIs and be ready to pivot and pilot new things, whether that is new ad formats, creative, or targeting strategies.
I know you're doing employee advocacy. That's a great, fit for LinkedIn content. Are you learning any lessons about maybe how to get employees more involved in that type of content? I had an example in the presentation this morning of an Australian bank doing that. Any lessons on how to get employees participating in that content mix on LinkedIn? Are you doing ads around employee content? What's kind of the current strategy look like for you there?
Yeah. And I just have loved seeing that shift across our industry to really enable employees to be brand advocates. I think it's no surprise that employee shared content sees really high engagement. It's a way to authentically show our company's culture, and it helps build that trust in the brand. When you are standing up an employee advocacy program, I would say you want to consider how to make social media feel less daunting and less time intensive. I think those were the two most common pieces of feedback we were hearing from employees. So some of the challenges you want to solve for is just to make it easier for employees to find approved content. I think that's a little bit of the hurdle, in being a regulated industry, is what's okay to post. How do I kind of get leveraging LinkedIn for business? So helping them, find approved content as a starting point, I think is helpful. Consistently encourage participation, and then find your top advocates. Those folks that maybe are more comfortable using social media can really be those prime examples and help, cascade that in the organization. And I think there are a lot of different tactics you can employ for a program, whether that is an employee ambassador program or even standing up a technology solution if you want to invest in it further. It's just about finding what's right for your business and your goals.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. Of just listening to the complaints, making it easier, putting steps into place for that.
Yep.
Tamara, I am interested in your take on how to maybe incentivize either internal influencers, employee content, or external influencers. We had a conversation where you talked about enabling users by kind of defining the ideal, modeling what content looks like with them, and what those stories look like, and incentivizing those. Can you give any lessons in that direction?
Yeah, so at Chubb, we do use a technology platform internally for our internal influencers, our employee influencers. And I've actually started in this past year an admin program where I'm working to empower individuals in each of the business lines to really support the program in every aspect of what we're trying to do. So as far as identifying content that's great to share, whether that's business specific, leadership specific, whatever the type of content might be, to really then empower our employees to feel like they are equipped to be sharing the right messages to connect with their audiences. And so by building out that admin program, I've not only been able to kind of take some of the work just off of my shoulders a little bit, but really getting others involved and feeling like they are kind of getting an inside glimpse or behind the scenes at social, which I'm sure many of you know. There's a lot of individuals who love social media. They want to be part of it. They're kind of chomping at the bit. Would maybe love to work for your team if you had enough resources and budget to hire them all. And so this really kind of gives a little bit of that taste. And then with the broader advocacy program, I've started doing an incentive program. So not just who is sharing the most, but really keeping the focus on the connections that are being made, who has the most engagements, who is generating the most impressions, not just let me go in and click to share content, but how am I really building my network on a platform like LinkedIn with connections that really matter to the business. And then, of course, doing different trainings and sharing the examples, as you mentioned, and really giving people options to help them feel comfortable promoting in a space. I think many regulated brands, probably for years, as social media was, quote, new, a lot of employees were told, don't post, don't engage, you have to be very, very mindful. And things have changed. And now employee advocacy is a huge part of so many brands' marketing programs. So I think that's great. And then from an external influencer perspective, It's very similar, taking kind of what we know works well from a person to person perspective and helping them understand our business in that way. So whether that's drafting up mock posts or giving them kind of a press kit, if you will, being very specific of who you are and what your messaging is, and then they can take that and run with it within the guardrails.
No, that's great advice. I think getting that detailed framework and system is very important. Lou, we're talking about employee content, user generated content. All of these things are really good for kind of building more personal touch points. But with wealth management, events play a big role in your business. We talked to Katie Marcinek from FM and kind of their investment in events earlier. How are you getting people to events? What kind of digital marketing are you doing to support these in-person events and making it easier to kind of deepen trust with customers and actually get them to these opportunities?
Yeah, so let's maybe split hairs a little bit on this, and I would love to get Right House and Chubb's feedback on this. But there are events which in the wealth management space, when it goes to retail, B2C, right? You have a bunch of advisors maybe doing seminars or client appreciation events, right? We've seen them all. I've probably been through a fair share of wholesaler meetings and events that are very similar. But what we're trying to do in that high net worth, ultra high net worth space is what I call an experience, right? These are not events. So let me explain the difference. An experience is similar to something that is unusual, different, and maybe even something that the high net worth client may not be doing. It's something they may not be able to get their hands on, even though most people at this wealth segment probably buy what they want. But it's something that you bring unique to the table. Also, what we recommend, in addition to these smaller, intimate groups, it's also better than large events because you have to worry about the coverage. So in these unique experiences, you want to create a great memory. And you also want to make sure that you are paying attention to the people you invited. So for example, if we did an event, I'll give you some examples, but if we did, say, a private chef dinner and we invited 10 clients and prospects, you probably want 3 or 4 people from your team to make sure there's like a 3 to 1, 4 to 1 ratio. It's harder to do that in larger events because it's really hard to work the room to be able to see everybody. And when you're dealing with this type of wealth, you want to make sure you're getting to see everybody and you don't want anybody to feel that they're left out. So that is something that we have been leaning more toward, just because it's more effective with this group of people. You can give them more attention. Don't get me wrong. There are some folks at a firm that do seminars and do it really, really well. But when you're starting to target a certain group of people and your ideal client is between 5 and 50 million, you have to do things that are different because they've done that before. They've been to the seminars. They don't want to go for the most part, right? They're very private people and they want to be exclusive and they want to get people to do things that are different for them. So a couple of things we've done in the past. Great seats in a ball game is pretty foundational, and it's stuff that everybody's for the most part is doing. But once again, we brought a couple of chefs in for private dinners, private tours at stadiums, cross-country skiing events we did group hikes, renting boats, fishing, whale watching. The list goes on. You can come up with some really cool, creative things. But the most important thing is these folks never forget these experiences. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me in the past and go, "Hey, remember when we took that boat out?" And I'm thinking, Jesus, this was like 10 years ago. How's this guy even remember this anymore? But it was so impactful that it was like he had a really good time and he remembers it. And it builds that relationship with the existing clients while making impressions with new ones, because they're going to end up telling everybody, right, that what they did that weekend or that week or something. And they're going to say, "Well, how'd you do that?" It's like, "Well, my wealth manager did this, or my financial advisor took me," right? So that's really good. By the way, there is a crossover into digitals, right? There's a lot of traditional blocking and tackling type of stuff that people may be doing. If you're not, it's something that you should, especially depending on the ideal profile of your client. But we also do encourage the wealth managers, we take photos during the event, right? This really works well if it's a smaller group. take the photos and share it with everybody on an email. So then a lot of the folks that got to know each other that they never met before, other prospects and clients to each other, they want to actually get together because they had a good time together and they enjoyed the company. So they now, helping them sort of connect and share each other the photos or anything else, their contact information. And then we also encourage those same advisors to share that on social media as well. So they want to share that event as well, because then people are going to be interested in what was going on there. What did you do? And I think that's really important too. So look, at the end, it's what we believe when we're trying to do these very exclusive events around this ideal persona is that when you service these clients the way you want to be serviced, they become loyal, right? They become loyal to you. They become loyal to the brand. They end up, like I said, they talk about you and they spread the word, right? They in our case, we hope they bring in more assets. They introduce you to other people that may need their help. So that's how we've been using events, but what we're calling it is more experiences internally, and a lot more of our advisors have been doing it. It takes a little bit more work because you're doing it a smaller group of people, but it's the quality over the quantity is our approach.
Yeah, I have at least one comment asking how they can get invited to these events, Lou. So I'll cover that with you after.
Yeah,
the show.
yeah. Most of the time, the marketing folks are the ones helping organize it, but we never get an invite either. But so we take it.
Tamara, I know Lou mentioned if anyone else had feedback on events. I know Chubb is doing some larger event partnerships with the U.S. Open and Art Basel. Any related lessons, anything to add to that kind of conversation?
Yeah, I think the exclusivity or the special experience is a huge opportunity area. And I would say, yes, right now we are doing things with US Open and Art Basel. Right now we have a PGA tournament this week where we're connecting our clients to play with some of the professional players. But I would say one of the most memorable events that I worked on when I was at Vanguard was there was a Facebook page that I made friends with about talking about finance, and made friends with the administrators. And we said, if you pay your way to our headquarters, we'll give you access to people. And that was the most exciting thing for them. It was fairly low budget on our end. We got lunch, we got snacks, we gave them swag, like all that kind of stuff. But it was really just that exclusivity and that exciting opportunity. They took so many photos. We had our CEO walk by at an exact moment. I saw later in the Facebook group, they were like, and the CEO just happened to stop by. And that was months of planning for the CEO to be in that exact moment. So I agree with Lou, like that's something that they're still talking about like 6 years later. And that's something that really helps demonstrate who you are as a brand and building those personal connections. So I'd say, it doesn't have to be this big, exclusive, swanky, high budget thing necessarily all the time. I would really think creatively around what matters to the people that you're trying to connect with.
I think that's an important point, to keep some of these ideas relatable, but I still want to go to some of Lou's events. I'm just going to keep that out there. Okay. Puyan, we're talking about a lot of personal touch stuff, but I do want to ask you about AI content creation before we close out as kind of a final talking point. We are, in a world where you mentioned already AI is useful as a kind of a co-pilot to whether it's helping copy, find messaging, even create the visuals. How do you incorporate AI tools without kind of losing the human touch that we talked about a lot today that is very valuable in this relationship building?
That's a great question. So I think human touch is a part that is not going to go away anytime soon whenever it comes to financial marketing, especially because there's a lot of laws and compliances, as I mentioned, that we need to be responsible for. So that's one thing. But I would say you can leverage as much as AI as possible for your production. But when it comes to the actual idea and the core basis idea that you need to work upon, it's better to actually have that human touch whenever it comes to be like a visual that you're creating or anything in that area. But one thing that I noticed, and it's really helping us in terms of AI, is A/B testing, I would say. So AI is really helping us with A/B testing. Of course, I'm not a marketer, I'm a creative director over here, but it's really important for me to have those insights to be able to actually create the next magic for our clients. So we had this, I would say, like idea that it was kind of unorthodox, I would say, in terms of the target audience we wanted to touch. And it turned out to be this successful campaign with lots of amazing successful CPIs and CTRs. And the goal for us was basically in 2023 to like increase engagement, where in 2024 was for us to increase brand awareness and basically add some new target audiences. So that's where actually AI came into place, especially for Meta. The auto adjustment tool that we have there is really helpful whenever it comes to campaign setting, the placement of the ad, or like how much budget should be allocated to each creative, those type of things. And we are actually, as we speak, we are testing out one of our projects. It has been done in this beautiful short form loop format of cell animation, and we are creating variations for it. So there are things that you can leverage AI to basically make your company soar, but you need to be really careful, and you need to basically choose the right battles with AI.
I think that's a great lesson and point to end on. Thank you so much. And thank you to our full panel, Liz from Bright House, Tamara from Chubb, Lou, thank you from Robertson Stevens, and Puyan, thank you from Designity. And big thanks to Designity as one of our partners for the event. Do check them out if you find yourself needing, backup on the design front, video editing, ad production, content creation. They have a great fractional solution there. So check them out. Thank you everyone for joining us. I really appreciate the insights.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.